Hey guys, tonight we are doing something wonderfully irresponsible for anyone who has ever tried to take ancient Egypt seriously. You're about to step, very gently, into a world of warm desert winds, drifting sand, and a pharaoh who would absolutely prefer a cozy board game night over carving his face onto a cliff. You're the traveler, the wanderer, the slightly sleepy time slipper, and I'm the quiet voice walking beside you with the soft assurance that everything is calm, everything is slow, and everything is mostly safe. Only mostly because, well, you probably wouldn't survive this. Not because of danger or curses or crocodiles or anything dramatic. Honestly, you'd just forget to drink water. Ancient Egypt is extremely dry, and you probably pack like someone who thinks sunscreen is optional. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And since I'm always curious, comment down below where you're listening from and what time it is over there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The desert opens around you like a giant golden quilt, the sand shaped into slow, endless folds that roll all the way toward the horizon. Warm light hits your skin, not harsh, just soft enough to feel like the sun is giving you a polite handshake. Beside you, the wind swirls tiny spirals up from the dunes, lifting grains of sand into the air like glitter someone spilled during a craft project and then tried to brush away quietly. You walk at an easy pace, your footsteps sinking into the sand with a gentle, sighing sound. Every step feels heavier than the last, but pleasantly so, like the earth is giving you a slow-motion hug. The air tastes faintly of dust, sun, and something almost sweet, like warm honey that has spent the day lounging under a thatched roof. Far ahead, faint structures shimmer in the heat. They look wobbly, uncertain, the way objects do when you try to look at them through the steamed-up window of a shower. But as you move closer, those vague shapes sharpen into tall walls, columns, and a palace that seems to glow as if lit from within. There's no grand fanfare, no trumpets, no line of soldiers doing that intimidating, synchronized stomp thing. The palace just sits there, quietly, like a cat who knows it owns everything in sight, but doesn't feel the need to brag about it. And, even from far away, you feel the pull of it. Not just because it's impressive, which it is, but because there's a strange softness to it. The palace doesn't shout. It exhales. Warm evening air rolls off its stone surfaces, carrying the smell of lotus blossoms from hidden pools you can't yet see. You hear muffled talk from the inner courtyards, nothing stressful, just the kind of murmured conversation that happens during the calmest part of the day. Even the guards at the entrance look relaxed, leaning casually on their spears like they're discussing dinner plans. As you approach, one guard nods at you as though you're a regular visitor who always forgets which doorway leads where. He doesn't question you, not because he thinks you're important, but because this palace seems to have a history of strange wanderers showing up unannounced. You get the sense they've stopped asking questions years ago. A warm breeze passes over your shoulders, brushing away time.
The pharaoh studies you with the kind of expression someone has when they're deciding whether you're a guest, a curiosity, or simply a pleasant interruption to their evening. His gaze is warm but quiet, steady in that way reserved for people who have long ago chosen peace over spectacle. He tilts his head slightly, as if listening not to you, but to the soft rustle of palm leaves overhead. "You came at a good hour," he says, voice low and unhurried. "The palace is always its most honest when the sun is tired." He gestures for you to follow, and together you walk toward the heart of the palace grounds. The air shifts again, cooler now, threaded with scents of crushed mint, evening blossoms, and faint smoke from torches being lit along the walkways. Each flame flickers just enough to give the place a dreamlike shimmer, like someone added a soft glow filter to reality. As you move deeper into the palace, the walls widen and the space opens into another courtyard, this one larger, calmer, and glowing with the last hints of daylight slipping away. The tall columns around the edges are painted in warm reds, gentle blues, and earthy greens, their colors slightly faded from sun and sand. They're not imposing. They feel lived in, familiar, like the architectural equivalent of your favorite hoodie. You notice immediately how different this palace feels compared to what you've always imagined. You expected hard lines, grand echoes, echoing footsteps of intimidated servants. Instead, there is a softness, a sense that things function at a practiced, leisurely pace. A cat strolls across your path, tail held high, clearly unimpressed by your existence. It pauses, glances at you, then continues its royal inspection of the courtyard. You swear it nods once to the pharaoh, as if to say, "Everything's fine here, carry on." Even the cats respect him, you think, even though you're pretty sure cats don't respect anyone. The pharaoh leads you through a set of tall wooden doors carved with gentle swirls and simple patterns. Inside is the grand entrance hall, though grand feels like the wrong word. It's tall, yes, with high ceilings and pillars reaching toward them, but everything radiates quiet discipline instead of ostentatious display. Light pours from narrow windows placed high above, catching dust motes that swirl like tiny constellations around you. A few attendants move through the space with bowls of incense and fresh water, their footsteps soft on the polished stone floor. No one bows deeply, no one shrinks into the shadows. They simply greet the pharaoh with the same relaxed respect someone might offer a kind teacher or an older cousin. You get the feeling that his rule is one of steadiness, not fear. He glances over his shoulder at you. People expect a palace to shout. I prefer when it whispers. You nod, though you're half distracted by a guard off to the side who is very clearly losing a subtle battle with drowsiness. His head tilts forward, then jerks back up, then tilts again. Poor man is fighting a war against his own eyelids, and losing tragically. You try not to laugh, but the pharaoh notices the direction of your gaze and smirks. He will fall asleep any minute, he murmurs. We take bets sometimes, though not on the record. You decide then and there that this man, this ruler, is not what anyone expects of a pharaoh, not even close. He guides you through another passageway where the walls shift from plain stone to intricate murals. Scenes from daily life stretch out in vivid color. Fishermen drawing nets from the river, children playing by the water, bakers shaping loaves in long communal ovens. You enter a smaller courtyard, one designed more for reflection than ceremony. The evening air is cooler here, carrying the scent of crushed jasmine and the faint mineral tang of the Nile not too far away. Your sandals make a gentle sound against the stone, a soft rhythm that blends with the occasional trickle of water from a hidden fountain. It's the sort of place that reminds you being a ruler doesn't always mean imposing yourself on the world. Sometimes it's simply about creating quiet spaces that feel like an embrace. The pharaoh stops in the center, turning to face you fully. He's shorter than you expected, but there's an unmistakable presence in the way he holds himself. Not demanding, not proud, but steady. It's the kind of calm authority that comes from being comfortable with your choices, even if they aren't what the world expects. He folds his arms loosely, and you realize he isn't interested in intimidating you. He's interested in inviting you to understand his world. You walk differently than most visitors, he observes, a trace of amusement in his voice. Slowly, thoughtfully. Perhaps you have already begun to understand my palace. You try to hide a grin. I do my best not to ruin a perfect sunset with clumsy steps. He gives a faint nod, as if that explanation alone is sufficient to prove your worthiness for this visit. The courtyard is circular, bordered by low walls and shaded alcoves. Small cushions rest near the fountain, inviting anyone to sit and stay a while. The water burbles quietly, as if content to be observed, and a pair of doves coo softly in the distance. The pharaoh gestures toward one of the cushions. Sit. You'll need your energy if you hope to keep up with me later. His tone is dry, but there's humor buried in the words. A gentle wink at his reputation as a ruler who prefers playful challenges to political posturing.
You settle on the cushion, feeling the smoothness of the stone beneath the fabric, and take in the details around you. Tiny carvings along the fountain's edge depict children playing, fishermen hauling nets, and a few more subtle images that seem almost like inside jokes. One shows a figure chasing a duck across a field, a rare and playful choice for official palace decoration. You wonder briefly if the artist had permission, or if the pharaoh secretly encouraged a bit of mischief. He watches you observing, and then gestures broadly at the courtyard. Everything here is arranged for comfort and attention. I've seen many rulers who confuse grandeur with peace. I prefer the opposite. Why build statues when you can build spaces that make people want to linger? A widely accepted historical fact filters into your mind. Some pharaohs truly did enjoy leisurely pastimes, including board games like Senet, hunting expeditions, or musical performances. It wasn't all monumental architecture and religious obligations, despite what history books often emphasize. And this pharaoh, you realize, has embraced that quieter life wholeheartedly. A lesser-known detail makes you chuckle internally. Some archaeologists have found that pharaohs occasionally altered board game rules mid-play, just to test patience or observation skills, sometimes for their own amusement, sometimes to teach advisors subtle lessons about.
The pharaoh gestures toward a shaded courtyard just beyond the board, one tucked away behind the main palace halls. It's smaller, more intimate, and immediately invites you to slow your steps. The air here is cooler, scented faintly with lotus and river mud, a grounding mixture that reminds you how close the Nile must be, even if you cannot yet see it. Light filters through the latticework overhead, scattering patterns across the smooth stone floor like soft, dancing lace. This is where the pharaoh keeps his favorite pastime, a Senet board that has seen decades of careful, deliberate moves. You'll want to sit, he says, already arranging cushions with precise care, before the game consumes all your focus and leaves you dizzy from strategy. He settles across from you, and for a moment the world outside, the bustling palace, the shifting sand dunes, even the distant city, ceases to exist. Here, it's just the two of you, a board, and the quiet patience of the evening. You slide onto your cushion, feeling the warmth of the stones beneath, softened by fabric, a small comfort. The pharaoh taps one of the pieces, a subtle, almost imperceptible sound that reverberates gently against the courtyard walls. Each piece is carved with care, polished smooth by countless games, yet none seem precious in the way treasures often are. They feel alive, in motion, even when still. The first moves are tentative, almost ceremonial. The pharaoh doesn't hurry. His fingers glide across the board with care, pausing just enough to let the weight of a choice linger. You make your own move, and he nods faintly, as if acknowledging not the skill but the thought behind it. There is no grand prize here, no roar of victory, only the quiet satisfaction of deliberate play. A widely accepted historical fact rises in your mind. Pharaohs of certain periods genuinely enjoyed Senet, sometimes using it to teach patience, strategy, and foresight to their court. The game was more than entertainment. It was a reflection of life itself, a metaphor for navigating fortune and chance. Yet sitting here with him, it feels less like a lesson and more like a conversation conducted in quiet motions and gentle gestures. You glance at the board and notice something subtle. Some squares are decorated with tiny symbols, not just colors. Fish, lotus flowers, and even small birds etched delicately into the surface. A lesser-known detail, you realize, is that these symbols were sometimes meant to represent spiritual journeys, little blessings to encourage luck and mindfulness. The pharaoh's attention to them is gentle, not pious, a quiet reverence woven into the joy of the game. He leans back slightly, observing your hesitation as you consider your next move. You see, he murmurs, voice low, some think that victory is all that matters, but the real reward is in the patience, the thought,
the little risks you take. You laugh softly. So losing is fine? He smiles, dry and fleeting, only if you've learned something from it. Around you, the courtyard hums with evening life. A cat pads quietly along the edge of the fountain, dipping its paw into the water with the grace of someone who knows they are above urgency. The fountain's trickle is hypnotic, a gentle metronome for the slow rhythm of play. A breeze stirs the latticework shadows across the stones, and somewhere above, a soft call of a nightbird punctuates the tranquility. You make another move, sliding your piece with deliberate care. The pharaoh tilts his head, eyes crinkling slightly, and lets out a quiet chuckle. Not bad. You've learned something already, perhaps more than you realize. He gestures toward the board again. Sometimes, he says, life isn't about the winning, but noticing the patterns, the spaces in between the moves. Historians still wonder if games like Senate.
The pharaoh's words hang in the air, light but weighted with meaning, drifting across the courtyard like a thin veil of incense. You let your fingertips hover over the board, feeling, not touching, the smooth edges of your next move. The board is no longer just wood and markings. It feels like a map of choices, a landscape shaped by patience and intention. The lantern nearest you flickers, casting a warm ripple of gold across the pharaoh's features. His expression is relaxed, contemplative, the kind of ease worn only by someone who has learned to meet life without flinching. He watches you, not with the eyes of a ruler judging a subject, but of a companion invested in the quiet ritual unfolding between you. Finally, you slide your piece forward with a soft click. It feels right, instinctive, like breathing. The pharaoh's eyebrows lift ever so slightly, a wordless acknowledgement that you've begun to trust the rhythm of the game. Good, he murmurs. The board responds to those who trust themselves. He doesn't move immediately. Instead, he lets a stretch of silence settle comfortably between you, the kind of silence that holds conversation rather than stifles it. The fountain continues its steady murmur, each drop catching the lantern light like tiny fragments of stars. Somewhere in the lattice shadows, the palace cat yawns, stretches, and curls up again, as though lulled by your peaceful contest. When the pharaoh finally moves his piece, he does so with a deliberate slowness, the faintest smile touching his lips. You're beginning to see the patterns, he says. Most people rush. They look only at winning. They don't consider the dance between the pieces, the space where the true game lives. You find yourself smiling back. I think I'm starting to understand. He nods, pleased but not triumphant. His voice lowers to a soft murmur, almost an aside to the universe rather than to you. Understanding, he says, is always the first victory. A cool breeze slips through the courtyard, rustling the papyrus plants near the fountain. It carries with it a faint whisper of the Nile, distant, steady, eternal. You wonder if the river is visible from the palace walls at night, or if it hides under the hush of reeds and moonlight until dawn. You imagine the pharaoh wandering there sometimes, barefoot and quiet, letting the breeze tug gently at the hem of his linen cloak. It suits him, the calm, the stillness, the thoughtful presence. The game continues, each turn a small, intimate conversation. You begin to notice how the pharaoh's strategies reflect something deeper, the way he waits just long enough before committing, the way he observes your choices without judgment, the way he adjusts his approach not to trap you, but to invite you into a deeper understanding. It feels less like competition and more like shared meditation. At one point, you make a move you didn't fully overthink. It's a risk, a real one. Your piece slides forward into a vulnerable position, exposed between two of his. You exhale quietly, unsure whether to regret it. The pharaoh studies the board, then the courtyard grows quieter as the last lantern settles into its steady glow, and the soft rhythm of your game drifts into a comfortable lull.
The pharaoh leans back with an easy sigh, nodding toward a nearby doorway framed with carved lotus petals. "Come," he says gently, rising with that unhurried calm that seems stitched into every movement he makes. "There are people you should meet. They've been pretending not to listen to us for the past hour." You follow him into a long hallway lit by low oil lamps, each one releasing a mellow amber haze along the painted walls. The air smells faintly of ink and crushed reeds, an unmistakable sign that you're approaching the realm of Egypt's scribes, those quiet artisans of thought who kept the kingdom running with ink-stained fingers and patience that honestly deserves its own holiday. As soon as you step into the scribe chamber, you hear the soft scratch of reed pens on papyrus, a soothing sound like tiny whispers brushing the surface of time. A group of scribes kneel at low desks, backs straight, shoulders tense in that particular posture of people who concentrate far more than the day actually requires. Their desks are cluttered with pigment pots, sharpened reeds, and stacks of partially written pages. One scribe glances up, then another, then a third who looks like he hasn't blinked since yesterday. They all quickly try to look busy again, but it's the kind of overly dramatic busyness that absolutely means they were eavesdropping. The pharaoh tilts his head at them with a faint smile. "You may speak freely," he says. A ripple of relief moves through the group. One older scribe clears his throat, sets down his pen, and offers you a polite bow. "Welcome," he says gently, rising with that unhurried calm that seems stitched into every movement he makes. "There are people you should meet. They've been pretending not to listen to us for the past hour." You follow him into a long hallway lit by low oil lamps, each one releasing a mellow amber haze along the painted walls. The air smells faintly of ink and crushed reeds, an unmistakable sign that you're approaching the realm of Egypt's scribes, those quiet artisans of thought who kept the kingdom running with ink-stained fingers and patience that honestly deserves its own holiday. As soon as you step into the scribe chamber, you hear the soft scratch of reed pens on papyrus, a soothing sound like tiny whispers brushing the surface of time. A group of scribes kneel at low desks, backs straight, shoulders tense in that particular posture of people who concentrate far more than the day actually requires. Their desks are cluttered with pigment pots, sharpened reeds, and stacks of partially written pages. One scribe glances up, then another, then a third who looks like he hasn't blinked since yesterday. They all quickly try to look busy again, but it's the kind of overly dramatic busyness that absolutely means they were eavesdropping. The pharaoh tilts his head at them with a faint smile. "You may speak freely," he says. A ripple of relief moves through the group. One older scribe clears his throat, sets down his pen, and offers you a polite bow. "Welcome," he says. "We've been documenting the outcomes of the royal game." Another scribe, younger and braver, or perhaps just more tired, adds, "There have been quite a lot of outcomes lately." A third scribe, without looking up from his page, mutters, "My wrist hasn't recovered since last month." You blink, glancing between them. You keep official records of every game?" "Of course," one says with a resigned sigh. "It is a royal pastime, therefore a matter of national importance." Another gestures toward a towering stack of scrolls at the back of the room. "That's just the last 2 seasons?" The pharaoh raises his hand modestly. "I enjoy a good pattern, and I enjoy when others appreciate good patterns." The oldest scribe gives you a look, an expression that silently communicates, "He enjoys patterns, we enjoy naps. Guess who usually wins?" You try not to laugh, but your face still betrays you for a moment. The pharaoh catches the hint of amusement, but his smile remains relaxed, as though he's used to being gently roasted by the people who record his every move. A scribe with smudges of blue pigment on his cheek motions you closer. "Come, see something," he whispers, as though sharing a classified royal secret that absolutely shouldn't be a whisper at all. He unrolls a long sheet of papyrus, revealing rows of symbols that track the pharaoh's winds. The soft chorus of scribes fades behind you as the pharaoh guides you back into the hallway. a long, serene passage painted with lotus motifs that curl delicately along the walls like gentle breaths frozen in time. The air grows cooler as you walk, drifting in from some open courtyard ahead. You can almost hear the palace exhale with each step, releasing the quiet pressure of a place that runs on patience rather than urgency. The pharaoh moves with that same unhurried rhythm, hands clasped loosely behind his back, sandals whispering across polished stone. You follow him through a series of archways until you reach a spacious chamber lit by broad skylights. Moonlight spills in like silver water, pooling across low cushions and carved wooden tables arranged in a wide circle. A faint trace of incense, myrrh maybe, clings to the air. This is the royal council chamber, except it's not at all what you expected. You thought you'd find stern officials, stiff postures, maybe a little political tension humming beneath the surface. Instead, you walk into what can only be described as the ancient Egyptian version of a very polite book club meeting. Council members sit in relaxed clusters, sipping from small cups of herbal tea. One man is adjusting his sandals, another fans himself lazily with a reed fan. A third seems to be trying, without success, to wake up fully. The entire room exudes the atmosphere of people who have been asked to show up, but not necessarily to panic. When the pharaoh enters, they all rise at once. It's respectful but gentle, like waves lifting and settling again. He raises a hand. "Be at ease," he says, and the whole room seems to return immediately to its preferred state of calm semi-restfulness. You take a seat beside him on a cushion that feels like it was stuffed with clouds. The council members shift their attention toward both of you, their curiosity politely tucked behind their composed expressions. A portly official with kind eyes clears his throat. "Your Majesty," he begins, "we've had several matters submitted for discussion today. Grain allocation, merchant routes," and he glances toward a thin papyrus sheet as though hoping it might solve the list for him. "The fisher folk near the delta have concerns about—" Yes, we'll address all of that," he interrupts softly, waving his hand in a gentle arc. "But first, I've been thinking about game balance." There's a collective internal groan you can practically feel rather than hear. But everyone smiles anyway, politely, resignedly, like people who already know there's no escaping the conversation and have accepted their fate with grace. One counselor, a woman with sharp eyes softened by years of diplomacy, asks carefully, "A new rule, Your Majesty?" He replies, "Only a small one, just a tiny adjustment, barely noticeable." He turns to you. "Tell them about the move you made during Senate earlier, the brave one." You blink. I moved my piece forward?" The counselors nod, as though this is thrilling, groundbreaking information. The pharaoh smiles, delighted. "Exactly! A bold move. It made me wonder if the board should reward boldness more intentionally." A middle-aged advisor rubs his temples the way a scribe might at the end of a long scroll-copying session. "Your Majesty," he says gently, "this is the third new rule idea this week." The pharaoh tilts his head, genuinely puzzled. "Is it? Time moves strangely when one is inspired." The woman counselor tries a diplomatic route. "Perhaps," she says, with a smile so soft it could qualify as a pillow, "we might discuss the grain concerns first, before revisiting game innovations." He hesitates, only for a heartbeat, and then nods. "Very well." And the council exhales.
The council chamber fades behind you, its soft murmurs lingering like warm steam from a cup of tea. The pharaoh stretches his arms with a quiet groan, the kind a person makes only after sitting too long on an overly plush cushion. Then he gestures toward a long, open-air corridor lined with papyrus plants swaying lazily in the night breeze. "Come," he says with a small smile.
Let's visit the artisans. They usually pretend not to like visitors, but secretly they adore showing off. You follow him into the corridor. The moon hangs low over the palace roofs, round and heavy with a mellow glow that washes everything in silver blue. The perfectly square paving stones under your feet still hold a faint trace of daytime warmth, radiating upward as you walk. Beyond the corridor, faint clinks and soft scraping sounds drift through the air, subtle, rhythmic, almost like the palace's heartbeat. You turn a corner and step into the artisan quarters. It's not what you expected. Yes, there are tools, chisels glinting in lantern light, stone blocks arranged in neat, respectful rows, paint pots lined up with impressive precision. But the atmosphere is cozy, soft, almost whimsical. It's as if the craftsmen have collectively decided that nighttime work should feel like hanging out with friends while pretending to be productive. There are woven mats scattered around, half-finished sculptures resting like napping cats, and two potters sharing what looks like a late-night snack of figs and honey. A painter is humming quietly as he grinds pigment, the sound gentle as a lullaby. When the artisans notice the pharaoh, their reactions are a delightful mix. One stiffens, realizes who it is, and then visibly decides they're too tired to panic. Another squints at him as though trying to determine whether royalty can exist after sundown. And a third gives a tiny wave with a clay-smeared hand, then immediately regrets the informality. The pharaoh laughs softly. Relax. I'm not here for any grand commissions, just passing through. You swear you see 3 people silently think every god in every pantheon they can remember. A tall sculptor with sand-colored hair and arms stronger than your entire sense of self approaches with a respectful bow. Your Majesty, he says, we thought perhaps this season you might request a new statue. The pharaoh chuckles. You can rest easy, I'm currently on a monument-free lifestyle. The sculptor lets out a sigh that could power an entire windmill. His relief is contagious. Around the courtyard, artisans loosen their shoulders, some even laughing softly. One whispers to another, bless the gods, my hands are still sore from that last obelisk polishing. A potter motions you closer to his wheel, where a small clay bowl spins lazily under his steady hands. We're more peaceful now, he says quietly, not having to rush to finish some enormous structure. He gestures at the wheel. It lets us breathe again. A well-known historical fact settles into your thoughts. Ancient Egyptian artisans were essential workers, respected, skilled, often organized into communities that lived and worked together. Their labor shaped temples, tombs, jewelry, everyday pottery. But their schedules weren't always gentle. A monumental project could mean months of intense pressure. No pressure now, though. Now they're relaxed, humming, teasing each other about crooked paint lines and lopsided bowls. One man shows you a wooden panel he's carving. A delicate lotus design, he says with a smile. This was supposed to be part of a throne, but since the pharaoh's not rushing any throne upgrades, I get to experiment with smaller ambitions. He holds up a tiny carved crocodile. You drift deeper into the low-lit chambers of the palace, still following the soft echo of your own footsteps as the air cools just a little, carrying the faint mineral scent of stone that has been waiting centuries for someone curious, someone like you, to walk past. The board game room, the quiet courtyards, the gentle breeze across the lotus pools, all of that fades behind you as you step into a space that feels more like a private archive of the royal mind. Shelves rise in neat rows, each filled with scrolls bound in dyed threads, little wooden tags hanging from them like sleepy ornaments. You barely touch the nearest one, and a whisper of dust spirals off, tiny motes dancing in the glow of your torch like they're enjoying their brief moment on stage. Your guide, me, that is, a quiet voice hovering somewhere near the edge of your awareness, sighs with amused affection, because this is where the pharaoh keeps his very important documents. Not military strategy, not building plans, not records of grain storage. No. This is where he keeps his journals of dreams, entire shelves of them, brightly labeled, carefully illustrated dreams. Some are full of lofty images of soaring above the Nile in the form of a hawk. Others chronicle mildly embarrassing moments, like showing up to a royal ceremony without sandals. You can't help but smile because somehow this makes the pharaoh feel more real than all the statues in Memphis combined. A warm breeze slips in through a high window, carrying the faint doorwood scent of papyrus reeds. You breathe it in, feeling the calm settle over you again. You notice a particularly thick scroll, decorated with tiny painted stars. You unroll a portion carefully and discover sketches of a giant game board laid out like a cosmic map, complete with constellations shaped like dogs, lions, and one oddly enthusiastic goose. There's even a note in the margin, written in a careful royal hand. Must ask astronomers if goose constellation is already taken. You quietly snicker, because this seems like exactly the sort of debate only a ruler with too much time and excellent commitment to whimsy would pursue. There's something soothing about being inside a room full of preserved thoughts. You feel as though you've stumbled into a place where time moves differently, slower, softer, less concerned with keeping track of ambition. It's a kind of sanctuary for the inner life of a pharaoh who, despite the weight of his crown, clearly wanted to understand his own dreams more than he wanted to carve his name into stone. That desire alone sets him apart from so many of his predecessors. The widely accepted fact here, one that scholars often point out, is that not all pharaohs were obsessed with monuments and grand displays. Some were introspective, preferring diplomacy over dominance and ideas over intimidation. A few left behind libraries rather than legacies of conquest, and your pharaoh fits neatly into that quieter category. You wander deeper between the shelves until you find small wooden drawers lining the far wall. You pull one open and discover tiny carved tokens, each representing a fragment of borrowed wisdom. One resembles a miniature loaf of bread, symbolizing nourishment, both literal and metaphorical. Another is a swirl-shaped talisman, meaning breath of clarity. The nicest.
The hallway guides you onward with its gentle hush, the walls muted in color, the floor cool beneath your feet like it's been waiting centuries for someone to appreciate how well it holds evening temperatures. You move slowly, partly because the air encourages it, and partly because you're still a little reluctant to leave the pharaoh's dream archive behind. It clings to you like the faint sweetness of incense that lingers in your clothes long after you've left a temple ceremony. But the palace has more to show you, and it nudges you forward with the softest insistence, like a cat guiding you toward an empty food bowl it believes you have forgotten to refill. Ahead, a warm glow slips from an open doorway. The scent hits first: toasted grains, honeyed steam, and the gentle earthiness of lentils. It's comforting in a way that reaches into the present moment and straightens out your shoulders. You step inside and find yourself in the palace kitchen, a surprisingly calm space this time of night. Stone ovens hum with low warmth, clay pots sit arranged in lazy circles near the coals, and woven baskets brim with fresh herbs, their fragrances drifting upward in soft waves. You wander in deeper, glancing at hanging ladles and shallow bronze pans polished smooth from years of careful use. The rhythmic scraping of a mortar surprises you. You turn to find an older cook working quietly at a table, her hands steady and movements unhurried. She glances up at you once, barely startled, and then gives the kind of small nod people offer when they've already accepted your presence as part of the scenery. Without saying a word, she gestures at a stool. You sit. The stool creaks beneath you in a friendly, approving way, like it's satisfied you're someone who appreciates good food. A pot simmers nearby, releasing a thin thread of steam that curls toward your face with the warmth of fresh bread. Inside is a dish the pharaoh loves, something soft, comforting, and humble. A blend of emmer wheat, honey, and crushed dates. The cook stirs slowly, every movement purposeful, as though she's conducting an orchestra made entirely of gentle bubbling sounds. Here's your widely accepted historical fact for this section. Kitchens in ancient Egyptian palaces served surprisingly simple meals even for rulers. Bread, stews, roasted vegetables, fish seasoned with herbs, all prepared with more care than extravagance. Only ceremonial banquets required the major productions. Day to day, pharaohs weren't feasting like cartoon kings. They were eating practical food designed to keep them content and functioning. Honestly, same.
You'd also rather have a warm bowl of stew than an over-the-top platter of roasted goose at 10 o'clock at night. You lean in and inhale the mix of sweetness and toasted grain. If scents could tuck someone into a blanket, this one absolutely would. On a nearby counter, you spot a shallow bowl filled with little crescent-shaped biscuits. They're slightly lopsided, clearly handmade, and carry the delicate aroma of coriander. The cook nudges the bowl toward you with the faintest smirk, as though she knows you're the kind of person who will struggle to politely take only one. You do take just one, though, and it's warm enough to make your fingers tingle. The texture is soft but crumbly, the taste gently sweet. You close your eyes for a moment and allow the flavor to settle like a comfortable memory. The quirky detail in this room, perhaps your new favorite.
You step back into the wide corridor, carrying with you the soft warmth of the kitchen and the lingering taste of honeyed grain. The palace feels even quieter now, like a great stone animal settling into sleep. The faint glow of oil lamps stretches along the walls, flickering gently as you pass, each flame bowing in your direction as if acknowledging your persistence. You don't walk quickly. No one walks quickly in a place like this. The air itself seems to tug at your sleeves, reminding you that there is no deadline here, no urgency, no rush. Only wandering. As you reach the next threshold, you're greeted by a much gentler scent this time. Something dried and herbal, clean and faintly sweet. You step inside and immediately notice the woven mats laid out across the floor, each neatly placed, each decorated with patterns that feel halfway between geometry and daydream. Hanging bundles of herbs sway gently from the rafters, whispering against each other with the softest rustling sound. This is the palace healer's room, a place for remedies, rituals, and quiet conversations about ailments that range from headaches to existential dread. A low table sits in the center, covered in small clay bowls filled with ground powders, oils, and fragments of dried roots. A cat, lean, caramel-colored, and very aware of its own importance, sits on the table as well, tail wrapped proudly around its paws. The cat blinks at you with regal disinterest, then looks away as though you've passed whatever silent test it required of you. You kneel beside the table, allowing your fingers to hover over the bowls. The healer, an older man with a shaved head and a surprisingly cheerful expression for someone who probably listens to other people's complaints all day, sits cross-legged nearby. He offers you a small nod, the kind that gives permission without formality. His linen robes are faded at the edges, his hands stained with plant oils, his eyes bright with the kind of wisdom that comes from mixing equal parts science, superstition, and sheer determination. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He simply hands you a small clay vial sealed with beeswax. You crack it open and inhale. Chamomile, a touch of mint, and something floral you can't quite place. It smells like bedtime in multiple languages. Here's your widely accepted historical fact for this section. Ancient Egyptian healers genuinely understood herbs and medicine far better than people tend to assume. They had remedies for inflammation, stomach issues, fevers, and even toothaches. They weren't perfect, of course. Sometimes they prescribed things like fermented fish paste, which you sincerely hope you will not encounter tonight. But overall, their blend of herbal knowledge and practical experience formed one of the most advanced healing systems of the ancient world. Your quirky detail appears almost immediately in the form of the healer's personal project, a bundle of herbs tied together with an overly decorative blue ribbon. The healer gestures proudly at it. You realize with some amusement that this is his experimental calming charm. It's made of proven herbs and also one dried banana peel, which he's included because as he tries to mime to you, he simply likes the shape. You do your best to keep a straight face as he drapes the charm dramatically over a nearby stand. Historians still wonder if healers like him relied more on empirical observation or spiritual interpretation. The debate continues, and the healer, if he were aware of it, would likely shrug and